Work through the next two chapters as well. And Israel dwelt in the land of Egypt in the country of Goshen, and they that had possessions therein and grew, and they multiplied exceedingly. And Jacob lived in the land of Egypt 17 years. So the whole age of Jacob was 147 years. And the time drew near that Israel must die, and he called his son Joseph and said unto him, If now I have found grace in thy sight, put, I pray thee, thy hand under my thigh, and deal kindly and truly with me. Bury me not, I pray thee, in Egypt. But I will lie with my fathers, and thou shalt carry me out of Egypt, and bury me in their burying place. And he said, I will do as you have said. And he said, Swear unto me. And he sware unto him, and Israel bowed himself upon his bed's head. I've started a series since I announced my time of retirement entitled Preparing to Leave. And I will be preaching on that subject until my last Wednesday night with you guys in October. What I'm hoping to do is help prepare you for where you will be after I'm gone, and give you some general insights in how we ought to prepare others for our leaving. And in the text tonight, we find Jacob, or Israel, as he was named later by God, prepares his family for his leaving. One of the key components in finishing well is to prepare your family for your leaving. And that's what we find in our text. So whether you're leaving a lifelong job, or whether you're leaving a certain location, or leaving this world for the next, your family deserves to know some things as you prepare to leave. It's important to prepare them for what lies ahead, and they deserve to know what to expect. So Jacob did a good job of preparing his family for his journey to the other side, and I want to walk through that with you tonight. In this first passage that I read to you, he prepared them for his leaving in several ways. In the last 17 years, he had lived in quite luxury in the abundance that came as a result of Joseph being the prime minister of Egypt and had the best of Egypt to give to his father. As a matter of fact, he picked the best land for him to settle with his children in the land of Goshen. And he also benefited from all that Joseph could supply. And so he had 17 years of fruitful blessing, and that's what he said in this text, that he lived in the land for 17 years, and the Lord blessed him exceedingly. This is quite different from what happened to him in the first part of his life. So look at verses 8 and 9 in this chapter, when Pharaoh asked him about his life. Pharaoh said to Jacob, How old are you? And Jacob said to Pharaoh, The days of the years of my pilgrimage are 130 years. Now listen to this. Few and evil have the days of the years of my life been. And I have not attained unto the days of the years of my life of my fathers in the days of their pilgrimages. He said, my days seem few and evil, and I hadn't accomplished nearly what my forefathers accomplished. And so in these last 17 years, he enjoyed the benefits of God's blessing. He told Joseph, he said, I want you to make me a promise. I don't want you to bury me in Egypt. I want you to take my bones and bury me where my ancestors, Abraham and Isaac, are buried. Look at chapter 49, verses 29 through 31. And he charged them and said to them, I am to be gathered unto my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephraim the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre in the land of Canaan, where Abraham bought with the field of Ephraim the Hittite for a possession of a burying place. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife, and there I buried Leah. And so he said, go take me back and bury me in the burying place where my forefathers, my father and my grandfather are buried. He prepared for his death as a man of faith. He let them know where he wanted to be buried, and he was claiming the promise that God had made to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that they were going to possess this land known as Canaan. And he said, I want to go back there because that's where the future of my descendants will be. And so he died as a man of faith. This past week, I took my wife to Mississippi to a cousin's reunion. We went down to Enid Lake in North Mississippi, and her cousins had not gotten together since 1989, so that's about 34 years ago, and they all had developed a little bit more age on them, and I was the oldest one there except her uncle, who's still around, and he's in his 90s, and so just before I left to head back here, I said, I'd like to share with you folks a little bit, and I said, you know, getting together with family is special. It's special to get together with your cousins, and you remember what you did when you were kids and how much you enjoyed playing together and all those things. But let me challenge you to prepare for the get-together on the other side. It is really important to make sure you get in that great reunion because you never know when you're fixing to leave. I said, a good possibility is if we meet next year, some of us will not be here. And so we need to prepare for our leaving by telling people where we're going. And here's what I said. I said, you know, the best thing that a person can give his or her loved one when they die is leave a forwarding address. Let them know where you went. Make sure they have no doubt that you are in heaven. It sure makes a big difference when you have the assurance that your loved one is already in peace and joy in heaven. So tell your family that you know you're going to heaven and you want to see them there. So Jacob prepared his family for his leaving, and then Jacob predicted some future blessings upon his family. He pronounced a blessing upon his grandsons. Now, we're not going to read all of chapter 48 and 49. I'm going to pick out some individual scriptures, but Joseph came in to see his dad. His dad was close to the time to leave. He knew he wasn't going to live long, and he was preparing himself to leave. And so Joseph took his two boys that had been born there in Egypt, Ephraim and Manasseh, and took them in to meet his dad, Jacob, and asked him to bless his sons. And so what happened was his dad, Jacob, had gotten so blinded that he couldn't see very clearly. And so here's what Joseph did. He put his hand on Ephraim so that he would go to the left hand of Jacob, and his hand on Manasseh to go to the right hand, because the right hand was the hand of blessing. And so the oldest one was Manasseh and the younger one was Ephraim. Well, here's this blind grandfather, and here's what he did. He crossed his hands and put his right hand on Ephraim and his left hand on Manasseh. And Joseph said, now wait a minute, Dad, that's not right. Here's the oldest. He said, I know what I'm doing. He said, I'm going to bless both of these boys. But I know that God's going to bless Ephraim in a special way, and he's going to have dominance over his brothers. And when you study the Old Testament, you will discover that the northern kingdom sometime was just called Ephraim, which was the dominant tribe. So let me read to you Genesis 48, 17 through 20. And when Joseph saw that his father laid his right hand upon the head of Ephraim, it displeased him, and he held up his father's hand to remove it from Ephraim's head unto Manasseh's head. And Joseph said to his father, Not so, my father, for this is the firstborn. Put thy right hand upon his head. And his father refused and said, I know it, my son, I know it. He also shall become a people, and he also shall be great, but truly his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations. And he blessed them that day, saying, In thee shall Israel bless, saying, God make thee as Ephraim and as Manasseh. And he set Ephraim before Manasseh. So he purposely crossed his arms in order to place the strongest blessing on his youngest grandson. Now, he told Joseph that God had a plan for him, and he was going to take him back to the promised land, back to the homeland, and he was going to be blessed there. Look at verse 21. And Israel said to Joseph, Behold, I die, but God shall be with you and bring you again unto the land of your fathers. And so, what he did, he pronounced future blessings upon his descendants. And it's pronouncing a blessing or announcing a blessing on your offspring. I don't know how many of you are aware that we as parents need to pronounce blessings on our children. We need to ask God to bless them and provide special leadership in their life and guidance and use them for His glory. And we are to pray over them and pronounce a blessing upon our offspring. And that's what Jacob was really doing, is pronouncing a blessing. He actually, if you go back and study it, he said, I'm adopting these two boys. They're going to be like my own sons. They're going to receive the same blessings as my sons. And he says, any other children you have, you raise them as your sons, but these two are going to be brought in as part of my son. And when you notice the listing of the 12 tribes, Ephraim and Manasseh, excuse me, is listed with the other sons of Jacob. And then as he was preparing to leave, he praised God for his blessings. Go back and remember what happened when these boys were young. You remember that he had this favorite wife, Rachel, but she was barren. And he had wives by Leah and two handmaidens, but he did not have a child by Rachel. And then God blessed, and Rachel had a special child, Joseph. And what did Jacob do to show his favoritism, his special affinity for Joseph? He made him a coat of many colors. You remember the story? And he was despised by his brothers, and Joseph didn't help matters any, because he kept telling them the dreams he had that one day they were all going to bow down to him. Well, you can imagine how that ruffled the feathers of his older brothers. It literally did happen later when they were in Egypt. But they devised a scheme. We're going to get rid of him. Here he comes. His dad sent him out there to check on his brothers, and so they took him and they threw him in a pit. Now, they were going to kill him, but one of the brothers interceded and said, let's don't do that. Let's just sell him as a slave. Let's make him a slave to some other heathen country. And sure enough, they sold him, and he went down in Egypt, and you know the story of what happened to him after that. They came back and they told Dad. They killed a lamb, sprinkled its blood on the coat, tore the coat up, came back and told Jacob, this must be Joseph's coat. Surely a wild beast has killed him and eaten him. It just grieved him to death. But you know how God works. And after the famine and everything, they went down into Egypt to buy grain. And after Joseph manipulated the situation a time or two, he finally revealed to them that he was their brother and that he was alive. And he said, go get Daddy and bring him down here while the famine's going on. They had to go home and tell their daddy what had happened. And here's what Jacob said. I thought I'd never see you again. And now I'm getting to see your children. What a blessing. Look at Genesis 45, 48, verse 11. Genesis 48, verse 11. And Israel said to Joseph, I had not thought to see thy face, and lo, God has showed me also thy seed. When Joseph got the news that, when Jacob got the news that Joseph was alive, he couldn't believe it until they sent the wagons to take him down there. I want you to go back to Genesis chapter 45, verse 25 through 28. Listen to it. And they went up out of Egypt and came to the land of Canaan unto Jacob their father, and they told him, Joseph is yet alive. He is governor over all the land of Egypt. And Jacob's heart fainted, for he believed them not. And they told him all the words of Joseph, which he had said to them. And when he saw the wagons which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob, their father, revived. And Israel said, it is enough. Joseph, my son, is yet alive. I will go and see him before I die. Well, it'd be interesting to know exactly how they explained to him that Joseph was alive when they said he was dead. And later on, they had to ask his forgiveness, but he said, don't worry about it. You planned evil. God used it for good. God sent me down here to save lives. And so God blessed him in a special way. And when we are blessed, we need to tell our children what God's done for us. One of the things that impacted our children the most when they were young was for Diane and I to sit down and tell them how God met special needs in our lives. You need to pass it on to your children as well. He told Joseph that God had fed him and had delivered him from evil. That's like giving his testimony to him. Look at Genesis 48, 15 and 16. And he blessed Joseph and said, God, before whom my father Abraham and Isaac did walk, the God which led me all my life long unto this day, the angel which redeemed me from all evil, bless the lads. And let my name be named on them and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude in the midst of the earth. He praised God for his blessings. It's easy for us to criticize the circumstances we're under, the problems we're going through, but we ought to start thanking God for what he's done and let our children hear us praise God for his blessings. The next thing he did, he personalized his blessings for his sons. Now, he brought all his sons in. Notice Genesis 49, verse 1. And Jacob called unto his sons and said, gather yourselves together, that I may tell you that which shall befall you in the last days. He said, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen to you and your descendants in the end days. And he knew his sons well. And so he told them what their personalities would produce. He predicted what their future was like because of how he had observed them. Now, each one was given a blessing according to who they were. Look at Genesis 49, verse 28. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel. And this is that their father spake unto them, and blessed them, every one according to his blessing, he blessed them. And so he personalized the blessing, and he dealt with things that characterized who they were. And I'm going to pick out a couple of them. Notice what he said about his son Judah. That's verses 8 through 12. Judah, you are he whom your brethren shall praise. Your hand shall be in the neck of thine enemies. Thy father's children shall bow down before thee. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, thou art gone up. He stooped down, he couched as a lion, and as an old lion, who shall rouse him up? The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet, until Shiloh come, and unto him shall the gathering of the people be. Binding his foal in his vine, and his ass's colt unto the choice vine, he washes his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. His eyes shall be red with wine, and his teeth white with milk. Two things I'll point out. He said, your brethren are going to bless you for what you have done to bless them. And he said the second thing is Messiah is coming through your children, through your descendants. You will be the father in the Messiah's lineage. And what a blessing that was. Of the tribe of Judah, Jesus was born. And then notice what he said to Joseph. He told Joseph, he said, I'm going to bless you. And he said that he was going to be a blessing. Everywhere he went, he would be blessed. And he would forget the hard times that he had lived. Joseph, this is verse 22. Joseph is a fruitful bough, even a fruitful bough by a well, whose branches run over the wall. The archers have sorely grieved him, and shot at him, and hated him. But his bow abode in strength, and the arm of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From thence is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. Even by the God of thy fathers, who shall help thee, and by the Almighty, who shall bless thee with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lieth under, blessings of the breast and of the womb. The blessings of thy father hath prevailed above the blessings of thy progenitors unto the utmost bound of the everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph, on the crown of his head, of him that was separate from his brethren. So what he says is, Joseph, you're going to forget about all those hard times when you were young, and everywhere you turn, you're going to be blessed. And so he personalized his blessings to his sons. And then one other thing I want to point out as he was preparing his family for his leaving, he parted from them in peace. Notice, if you will, the last verse of chapter 49. And when Jacob had made an end of commanding his sons, he gathered up his feet unto his bed, yielded up the ghost, and was gathered unto his people. Joseph got to see his dad, and Jacob got to see his long-lost son. They had a wonderful time, 17 years together. And then now, after he's blessed his 12 sons, he gathers up his feet, closes his eyes, and goes to sleep. To me, that's a very dignified way to end your life. He ended his life with dignity, with grace, and a sense of completion. He was ready to go on. Jacob finished well, and his descendants became the 12 tribes of Israel. I've preached a lot of funerals. It's just the lot of a pastor, and especially if you have a congregation that's elderly, you're going to preach quite a few funerals. The loved ones of the departed look for something to help them grieve and get over their loss. To know their loved one is in heaven is such a great relief to those who lose a loved one. If you don't know your loved one is in heaven, there's not much a preacher can say that can fill the void. So, folks, it's good to know where you're going. You need to leave having finished what God sent you to do, and you need to bless your family and your offspring and help them prepare to carry on the torch of faith in the days ahead. So, preparing to leave, there are a lot of ways to leave. I don't plan to go to the grave soon. That's out of my hands. But I am trying to prepare my children and my grandchildren to carry on the faith after it's time for me to leave. You need to think about what you're leaving behind with your children, your grandchildren. Leave them with faith that will carry them through their dark days. Let's bow in prayer. Father, thank you for your word. Thank you for the privilege to share it. Thank you for this example from Jacob's life, telling us how we ought to leave with dignity and grace. I pray, God, you'd bless us as we finish our journey. Help us to finish well. Help us, Lord, not to quit on the job that you've given us until you're ready for us to hang it up. I pray, God, that you would bless every person here to leave a legacy of faith and of godliness, and we'll praise you for what you do through our lives. In Jesus' name.